I'm going to be brutally honest with you. What you're about to hear today can forever change the way you understand people. Your father didn't teach you this, your teachers didn't, and I assure you that most men will go to their graves without ever having understood it. 500 years ago, a man named Niccolo Machiavelli wrote some of the most uncomfortable and dangerous truths about human nature. Truths so powerful that the church banned them because they were unbearable for the established order. And yet, the great leaders of the world study them in secret while publicly criticizing them. Why? Because they're not theories. They're operating manuals for the human mind. They don't describe what we pretend to be or what we wish to be, but what we really are. So why did they never tell you? Because we've been programmed to believe that understanding power is evil, that thinking strategically is manipulation, that seeing reality clearly is cynicism, but the truth is the opposite. Ignoring these laws is not virtue, it's weakness. And weakness always comes at a high price. The first truth that no one taught you is this: human beings are not rational creatures seeking what's best for themselves. They are emotional beings who flee from pain and chase the immediate. Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge more by what they see than by what they touch, because everyone can see and few can feel." Translated, people decide based on appearances, not on essence. Think about it. The friend who asks for advice about their relationship but never applies it because it makes them uncomfortable. The co-worker who complains about being broke while spending money on whims. The woman who says she wants a good man, but always chooses the one who generates more drama for her. All of them act based on how they feel, not on what's best for them. The lesson is simple. Never try to convince someone with logic. If you want to influence, speak to their emotion, to their image, to their need to feel important. Most people lose arguments trying to be right. Men who dominate emotions never need to argue because they've already won before opening their mouths. Whoever understands this controls any room they enter. Second truth, loyalty. You were taught that loyalty is sacred, that you should give it to your friends, to your company, to your partner. But Machiavelli was clear. If one must choose, it is much safer to be feared than loved. What does this mean? That loyalty without reciprocity is not virtue, it's being used. The friend who only appears when they need something is not loyal. The company that disguises itself as family while firing employees isn't either. The partner who keeps their options open while demanding your commitment isn't. Being loyal to someone who doesn't return the same doesn't make you noble, but naive. And the naive always end up trampled. Real loyalty is built in two directions. When someone breaks that pact, the contract disappears. The key is not to give blind loyalty, but strategic. Inspire loyalty with your value, with your strength, never with need or weakness. Third truth. Your reputation is not based on being liked, but on being respected. Machiavelli understood it better than anyone. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you are. In other words, in human interaction, perception is reality. Many believe that being authentic is showing everything. Wrong. True authenticity consists of strategically deciding which facet to show without betraying your essence. Those who complain most about being misunderstood are usually those who have the least control over the image they project. They deceive themselves believing that if others knew their true self, everything would change. No, what matters is not your internal self, but the version of you that you present to the world, and that serves your objectives. Do you want to seem competent? Don't complain about problems. Offer solutions. Do you want to seem valuable? Don't always be available. Scarcity generates value. Do you want to seem strong? Never explain your decisions to those who have no power over your life. The formula is clear. Consistency plus mystery plus controlled vulnerability create a magnetic reputation. Fourth truth, conflict is inevitable. Your father perhaps taught you to avoid it, to keep the peace, to not look for trouble. But Machiavelli wrote it, war is not avoided, only delayed to the advantage of others, which means that conflict is always there, even if you close your eyes. If you don't prepare, you're already losing. At work, someone wants your position. In your relationships, there's always another willing to take your place. In social life, there's always someone willing to test your limits. Don't seek the fight, but prepare for it. Curiously, the prepared man almost never needs to fight. His mere presence, his disposition, make others seek easier targets. Train when you don't need it. Save when you have abundance. Build alliances when you don't need favors. Stay strong when there's no threat. Machiavelli summed it up with a perfect metaphor. The lion cannot free itself from traps. The fox cannot defend itself from wolves. That's why one must be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. Don't choose. Be both. Fifth truth. The most dangerous lie you probably heard is, be good and people will love you. Machiavelli understood the difference between being good and being compliant. Being good in the real sense means doing what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. Being nice usually means avoiding conflict and saying what others want to hear. That's why women say they want good men, but feel attracted to those who aren't afraid to make them uncomfortable, because they confuse nice with weak and good with brave. Men who always seek approval will never be respected. Those who do what's right, even if it hurts, end up being valued. The powerful one is not who pleases everyone, but who is not afraid to disappoint those who don't matter. Strength combined with goodness generates magnetism. Weakness disguised as kindness is repellent. Up to here, you've already received 5 truths that no one dared to tell you. That people are moved by emotions, that loyalty must be reciprocal, that reputation is built, that conflict is inevitable, and that goodness is not confused with being servile. And what comes next is even deeper, because this knowledge is not a game of manipulation, it's a shield. It's learning to move in a world that already plays these rules, even though everyone pretends not to. Now that you've heard these truths, I want you to understand something essential. Power never disappears, it only changes hands. Society has made us believe that talking about power is talking about evil, when in reality power is simply the ability to influence the direction of events. You can ignore this dynamic, but it will continue to function over you. And if you don't understand it, you'll be a pawn on someone else's chessboard. Look around you. In every group, in every company, in every relationship, there's always someone who sets the rules without anyone noticing. That someone isn't always the strongest or the smartest, but the one who understands how we human beings work, our emotions, our fears, our deficiencies. What Machiavelli taught us is that whoever masters those invisible levers has an advantage over everyone else. The real mistake of your father, your teachers and society wasn't lying to you. It was hiding from you that in every human interaction, a silent battle of power is waged. A battle that isn't won with muscle or with titles, but with strategy, perception, and character. Understand this. Life doesn't reward the noblest, it rewards the most lucid. The man who knows when to speak and when to be silent, who knows when to withdraw and when to attack, who is capable of being kind but never weak. That is the man everyone respects, even his enemies. And here enters another principle that Machiavelli repeated tirelessly. Appearance matters as much as essence. People will say that what's important is what you carry inside, but they always act based on what they perceive outside. That's why your reputation must be worked on like armor. It's not about building an empty facade, but about shaping the perception that others will have of you. Because while they interpret, you decide what to show. The man who complains about not being understood, who says that if others knew my true self, everything would be different, that man hasn't understood the most basic rule. Others are not going to enter your mind. They're only going to judge what you project. You decide if you project power or insecurity. Now let's talk about a more painful point, conflict. We live surrounded by men who cling to the fantasy that by avoiding confrontation, they will avoid pain. But as Machiavelli said, conflicts are not avoided, they are postponed. And when you postpone them, they don't disappear, they grow. What you ignore today will be your executioner tomorrow. The prepared man doesn't seek a fight, but doesn't fear it either. He's the one who trains in silence when others are distracted, who saves money when everyone spends it, who reinforces his discipline in calm times because he knows the storm will come, and when it arrives he's ready. That man doesn't need to demonstrate aggression. His mere presence transmits that he's not an easy target. Respect is born from the silent recognition of strength, not always physical strength, but strength of character, the gaze of one who doesn't lower their eyes, the firm voice of one who doesn't hesitate, the calm of one who knows that if the moment comes, they can withstand the blow. That is the man who rarely enters war because everyone knows that if he does, it's to not lose. Another uncomfortable truth that few accept is the relationship between goodness and weakness. Society repeats to you again and again, be good and everything will be fine. But observe, most good men end up used, exploited, or ignored. Why? Because they confuse being good with being compliant. True goodness requires courage. The good man can be tough if necessary, can say no even if it displeases, can uphold principles even if it means losing. The compliant man, on the other hand, only seeks approval, even if that means surrendering to mediocrity. Women, friends, bosses, everyone unconsciously recognizes this difference. That's why the nice guy figure never generates respect. Because kindness without strength is not virtue. It's disguised weakness. The man who combines goodness with firmness, on the other hand, inspires trust and attraction. Machiavelli summed it up with crudeness. Men are so simple and so obedient to the needs of the moment that whoever deceives will never lack victims. What does it mean? That if you're not conscious, you'll be manipulated by someone who is. It's not about becoming a manipulator. It's about opening your eyes because, understand it well, at all times someone is playing this game. Some do it instinctively, others do it with strategy, but everyone plays it. And you can pretend it doesn't exist or learn the rules and stop being a pawn. Up to now, we've seen the first 5 truths that redefine how to understand people. But there's something deeper, something that unites all these ideas, the ability to not be ignored. Because in the end, the greatest punishment a man can receive is not to be feared or hated. It's to be invisible. Invisible men spend their lives adapting, pleasing, avoiding conflicts, giving loyalty without measure, begging for understanding, and end up forgotten. Men who understand these laws, on the other hand, are never ignored. They become figures that others must take into account, even their rivals. And here begins the real game. Do you want to be invisible or impossible to ignore? You've already understood that people are not rational, that loyalty cannot be blind, that reputation is a weapon, that conflict is inevitable, and that goodness is not weakness. Those 5 truths are just the beginning. The next step is to understand the essence of power. It's not about manipulating others. It's about making yourself immovable. A man who understands human nature is no longer dragged by the current, no longer lets himself be carried away by the emotions of others or by the promises of those who never keep them. Instead, he observes, calculates, and acts with precision. The system we live in doesn't want you like this. It wants predictable, manageable, obedient men. Men who work hard but never question, who give everything to a company that will replace them with another tomorrow, who sacrifice themselves for a partner who may never be faithful to them, who silence their ambitions so as not to make anyone uncomfortable. That is the version of man that suits society, weak, docile, conformist. But you are no longer that man. By listening to these words, something breaks inside you. The illusion that being good is enough, that being loyal guarantees security, that avoiding conflicts will bring peace. Now you understand that the world operates under different laws and that whoever ignores those laws lives condemned to frustration. Look, there's a phrase by Machiavelli that sums all this up. It is better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both. Many misinterpret these words as cruelty. They are not. They are realism. Respect is the basis of all human relationships. If someone loves you but doesn't respect you, sooner or later they will trample you. If someone respects you, even if they don't love you, they will never be able to ignore you. And remember, the worst thing is not to be hated, the worst thing is to be invisible. Think about the men you remember from history, about those who have left a mark. None achieved it by trying to please everyone. None were remembered for avoiding conflicts. All, without exception, were respected because they dared to see reality as it was, not as they wished it to be, and in doing so they became impossible to ignore figures. What I'm teaching you is not a path toward coldness or manipulation, it's a path toward freedom. When you understand these laws, you no longer beg for attention, you don't plead for affection, you don't give away loyalty without measure. You become someone who chooses, and the man who chooses always has power. Let me repeat it to you. Life doesn't reward the one who waits, but the one who understands. You can keep believing that everything will be fixed by being a good person, or you can open your eyes and recognize that everyone plays, even if they deny it. The difference is whether you play blind or with vision. Now, what will you do with this knowledge? Because power without direction becomes chaos. The objective is not to dominate everyone, but to stop being dominated. It's not to manipulate, but to see clearly. It's not to fear conflict, but to be prepared for it. What comes next is even more disturbing to understand how people act. You need to learn to make them seek your approval, to have them perceive you as someone whose validation is worth more than any other. That is the highest level of influence, when others feel that without you something is missing, and that's where the dangerous game really begins. That's where you separate yourself from the 99% of the rest. That is the terrain where Machiavelli was most feared. He didn't just describe human nature. He showed how to make others become dependent on your presence. But listen well, this knowledge is not for everyone. Most men are not ready to look at themselves in this mirror. They prefer the comfort of believing in myths, of thinking that everything will fall into place on its own, of deceiving themselves with the idea that good attracts good. You already know that's an illusion. What you have in your hands now is a map to a place where very few arrive, because it demands detachment, lucidity, and discipline. It's not about being ruthless, but about never being naive again. It's not about destroying others, but about not allowing them to destroy you. So ask yourself, do you want to continue being invisible, or do you want to become someone impossible to ignore? The decision is yours. And remember, I should never have told you this, but now that you know, you can no longer unlearn it. Power is not given, it is taken. And from today you have in your hands the tools to begin taking it. If this opened your eyes, it's not an ending. It's just the first door, because at the next level, you will discover the most dangerous lesson of all. How to make people need your approval more than the air they breathe. Are you ready to enter that territory? If you are, take the next step, because the knowledge you just received has already changed your destiny.